If you're as excited as I am for Dragonsoul to open this week and you're wondering where you should focus your efforts first, then hopefully I can help you a little bit. This is specifically for 10-man groups, and specifically we're talking about Heroic, obviously, because on normal, you're just going to want to kill all the bosses. Whereas with Heroic, and depending how much raid time you're actually going to have the first reset, you want to maximize the amount of loot that you're actually going to get, and sometimes that might mean sacrificing certain bosses and killing them on normal just to get to the later bosses that are arguably easier. Now, while this video can only be so accurate because your raid composition versus mine could be completely different, you might have lots more range than we have in our group, which means you might have an easier time on some bosses where we'd have an easier time on other bosses, and even the healing and tanking composition will make a big difference as well. So really, I can only just give you my opinions on what I would do if we was pretty limited for time. Fortunately, as a raid team, we aren't going to be limited for time because we're all sad, no-life losers. Especially Hoyt. But look, I think the most important thing that you can do before the raid even opens is make sure that you put in as much time into the Twilight dungeons as physically possible. Make sure you're simming the upgrades, looking at what your 2 set and 4 set is for tier 13, and honestly, just go in on the first night as stacked as physically possible. It still kind of sucks that Blizzard decided to only give us 1 to 2 days of Twilight dungeons before the raids actually open. A full week would be preferable, and a full week is what we normally get anyway. So, yeah, kind of not happy about that, Blizz. But look, assuming you're doing all the basics like going in the Twilight dungeons, let's have a quick think about the bosses and which ones you might want to target early on and which ones you might want to skip. Morchok's the first boss you're going to see, and you're absolutely going to want to kill him. He's not particularly difficult, and while people say it's a meme to 4-heal that boss, it makes it completely face roll. So if you're even a little bit concerned about wasting time, you can literally just chuck 2 healers on each side and it will be a one-shot. Whereas if you do 2 healers, the healers have to be on their game and make sure that they're not letting anyone die on their side, because the actual amount of healing that you need to do is quite high. But Morchok, honestly, is one that you're going to want to go for on night 1, and you're definitely not going to want to skip this, because if I'm completely honest with you, if you can't do Morchok, and especially if you can't do Morchok for healing, you're going to struggle with all of the future bosses anyway. But just for the basics, you're going to want to split into 2 groups anyway. You're going to want 1 group on Morchok, 1 group on Cockrom, and then you're going to be soaking the crystals and healing through the stomp damage, making sure that you've got someone who's got good amounts of personal cooldowns or high health, high armor, being the closest person to the tank during the stomps as well. I don't want to go through this video constantly talking about mechanics because the purpose of it is not to be a boss guide. For Morchok, I feel like that's literally all the explanation for that boss that you need. Now you're going to have a choice of 2 bosses, Warlord Zonos or Yor'sahj. Now, quite honestly, Warlord Zonos is one that I would skip week 1. I'm talking to you like you're a group of people that have done 0 PTR. You're looking for some information on the raid going in. Maybe you're looking at this 10 minutes before the raid's opening and thinking, where should we start? If you had lots of practice on Zonos and you was close to a kill, or even you killed it, of course you're going to kill Warlord Zonos and you're not going to skip it. But it is the one that took our group the most amount of time. We had to make lots of tweaks, lots of changes, and this boss could easily cost you a few hours if it's the first time you're seeing it. And again, if you're limited on time where you're only going to raid, let's say, a couple of evenings for 3 to 4 hours each evening, this one boss could quite easily eat up the vast majority of that time. So this would be the first one where I said I would probably skip over it if you haven't got an experienced group and move on to Yor'sahj, because even Yor'sahj will be a bit of a learning curve, but it's not as bad as Warlord Zonos, like nowhere near. You're going to get 4 slimes come in, and you're going to be able to kill one of the slimes, which will basically stop the boss from gaining the ability from that slime. There's only really one bad crossover, and that's when you get Rella. And that's when you get red, yellow, green, and black. So really, with this fight, if you can get through that phase, you can kill the boss. It's quite literally that straightforward. So let's say you pull the boss on your first, second attempt, whatever, and you get one of the first combinations being red, yellow, green, black, and you successfully get through that, you know straight away you can kill the boss, because it is literally the only difficult one to deal with. So what I would recommend is definitely doing this boss, but if you keep getting to that exact point and you're struggling to 2 heal it, then go to 3 healers. I've 3 healed it and 2 healed it, so both ways work. But quite honestly, the 3rd healer is only needed, and I'm not even saying it's needed, but possibly needed for that one combination. So if you can organise your raid cooldowns well enough that it's going to get you through that phase, then 2 healers will be absolutely fine for the rest of the fight. In fact, when you're getting the purple debuff, which is a healing debuff that you need to manage, having 3 healers actually makes that harder. So yeah, I would say Yor'sahj is one you're definitely going to want to put some time into. I'd honestly say it's just that one ooze combination that will take a little bit of tweaking. One change we made far later on than we should have is when the red's up and everyone stacks close, that's great. When red's there, the further away you are from the boss, the more damage you take. But we kind of just stood near the boss. You want to be in the boss, like inside the red hitbox. As soon as we had everyone in, it really did massively reduce the stress on the healers. So just a little tip. Now, if for some reason you didn't want to put too much time into Yor'sahj or Xanos, Hagara is actually a very comfortable boss, to be fair. There's only really one thing that's difficult to deal with on this boss, and it's the lightning phase. And as soon as you actually manage that lightning phase properly, the rest of the fight is actually really, really easy. So this is one that you definitely do not want to skip on Heroic. In fact, if I was really limited on time and I could only pick 2 or 3 bosses to do on Heroic, this would be one of them. All we done is had a tank and 1 melee moving left around the room during the lightning phase, and then me and a warrior running round right during the lightning phase to light all the pylons up, and then everyone else was stood in the middle. Honestly, it's actually really comfortable. Once you get that little bit down, you'll be able to kill the boss no problem, because the frost phase is really easy, her normal phase is really easy. So what you want to do with this boss is just get some reps in on working on the lightning phase. Now, you can actually tell which phase it's going to go into by what her weapons look like. If her weapons look like they're charged with lightning, you know you've got a good pull and you're going to get lightning first, because, as I say, ideally you want to be pulling and wiping in the lightning phase to get that right first, because frost won't take as long. But if her weapons look a bit icy and cold, then you know the next one's going to be the ice phase. But honestly, this is one that I would absolutely say you want to kill. Morchok, Hagara, if you only want to focus on 2 heroic bosses for the week because you are very limited on time, make sure it's those 2. And then moving on to one that I also don't consider to be particularly difficult at all, even though on 25 man it's the complete opposite, and that would be Ultraxion. Once you sort out the rotation of soakers, it is really, really straightforward. In fact, with the amount of DPS people are probably putting out, especially once you've got extra gear from the Twilight dungeons, I think this boss is going to be very, very comfortable. If you've got 2 competent healers, you'll be absolutely fine. Out of all of the heroic bosses, Ultraxion took us the least amount of pulls, as in it was only a few, whereas some of the other bosses that we've already spoke about took far more, including Hagara, which I would have said was an easier boss before pulling Ultraxion. So again, for this specifically, I would say if you've got 2 good healers, definitely give this a go. So breaking this down as we go, if you know you 100% will only have time for 2 heroic bosses, I kind of would still lean towards Morchok and Hagara. But if you've done a few pulls on Hagara and you can't get the lightning phase working properly or in a decent amount of time, then move on to Ultraxion and you'll probably get Ultraxion down without too many issues. If you know you've definitely got time for 3 bosses, obviously you want to do all 3 of them. Moving on any further than here, if you've got to think about what bosses you're going to do, none of the rest you're even going to want to think about. Firstly, to actually do Spine Heroic, you have to kill Blackhorn on Heroic, and to do Madness on Heroic, you have to have killed Spine on Heroic. So it's really only the 5 bosses where you can optionally choose between which ones you're going to do, because if you intend on going any further, you have to do all of them on Heroic to be able to get to Spine Heroic and onwards anyway. But quite honestly, Blackhorn, while it's not ridiculously hard, I would say it's kind of on par with maybe Xanos, in terms of once you've got the first phase down and the cadence of the fight and the soak-in, and actually how much soak-in you don't need to do, which is important, because the more you can just focus on killing everything and not worrying about soak-in, getting that balance right between not letting the ship explode and not sort of over soaking, then it's only a matter of time until you get to the actual boss itself. But even then, it's not like you've got to that point, it's a free kill. We got to that last phase lots of times and it's still very difficult, a very difficult fight in the gear that we're in. And again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not talking to people that have got 10, 12 hours a day every day, because at that point, you might as well not switch any of them to normal, obviously. Take the time, you'll get them down. But if you're limited on time, the last 3, don't even worry about them week 1. But Morchok, Hagara, Ultraxion, they're easy pickings, I would say. And then if you can throw Yor'sahj in as well, you've had a really good week. But Zonos, I would kind of just hard skip unless you know you've got a good few raid nights to go at it. And that's it. That's my advice. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. But again, if you really want to use and utilize the amount of time you've got, I think this might give you at least a little bit of something to go at. If you enjoyed the video, as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Good luck in Dragonsoul. You probably won't see a video go out for a couple of days. I think I've got one more scheduled, but then that'll be me to the weekend because I'm going to be raiding constantly as well. If you want to come and watch, I'm on kick.com/Scottejaye, and I might even be streaming on Twitch as well. I'm undecided at the moment, but I'll definitely be on Kick if you want to come and find me over there. Anyway, I'll see you on the next one.